Danny. Hey, Emilia.
Hey, I see some of you guys already checking in with where you're tuning in from. Tell us more. Tell us more. Where are you guys watching from? Let's see. We have Wisconsin, right? I think I saw Milwaukee somewhere as well, Atlanta. Very nice to see all of you guys tuning in. Thank you for being here. My name is Danny, and I have the honor and the privilege to be sitting in this room with greatness. I have Emilia Korczyńska, who is head of marketing at Userpilot, and I have Tom Niezgoda, who is head of marketing at Surfer. So, welcome to my invited guests.
Hello, Danny. Hey, Emilia, once again.
Hey guys, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So, please keep telling us Uruguay, welcome. Okay, please keep telling us where you're tuning in from. But we're going to dive in with some of these questions. It's my job today to grill these brilliant minds and then give all of that awesome information to you guys who are tuning in. Okay, so I guess I'll start with Emilia. Emilia, what do you do at Userpilot and what does a typical day look like for you?
Right, so I'm the head of marketing at Userpilot. I've been doing this for, well, almost 2 years now, over 2 years now. Yeah. With Userpilot for almost 3 years. And my typical day, oh, well, that's a difficult question because I don't think there is a typical day in that role. I manage both the inbound and the outbound teams. So, I juggle a lot of different responsibilities, basically, checking in with everyone, making sure we stay on track, that we're like executing towards our vision and strategy, and that everyone has everything they need, and working a bit on the strategy itself, like trying to carve out some time to innovate and find new ways to optimize what we were already doing. And then, of course, there are still a lot of hands-on things that I'm doing. So a bit of RevOps, a bit of demand gen, a bit of everything, I guess.
Okay, so you've got your hands full. Yeah.
Quite full, yeah.
Okay. And you, Tom, what do you do at Surfer, and what does a typical day look like for you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm leading Surfer's marketing team, and maybe it will be easier for me to answer how my weekly routine looks like instead of daily, because days differ from each other very much. So there are a lot of things on a weekly basis I'm taking care of. For example, I'm trying to solve as many problems as possible. I'm trying to be as helpful as possible to all of the team members, teammates, including you, Danny, of course. And I'm trying to figure out some ways on how we could improve our marketing communication, right, and product in general, because I'm very obsessed about the product itself, right? So I'm trying to spend some time with a product team as well, because mostly because of my background in SEO. Yeah, I would just, one more thing that I'm trying to do is to combine all of the amazing ideas that are coming from all of the team members and in the company in general, under one roof, our marketing strategy.
Got it. Okay. Also a very busy person. So I love asking people this question because I feel that the more you understand something, the more simply you can explain it. So I know that you two capable humans know how to explain what you do. How would you explain User Pilot to your grandmother or your grandfather, Amelia? How would you simplify what User Pilot is?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I would probably say, like, grandma, that GPS thing in the car that tells you in 600 meters, turn left, right? And shows you where you are on the map and how to get to where you're going. This is exactly what Userpilot does, but in, applications.
Got it. Okay. So it leads the way. It helps guide, gives you a step-by-step kind of roadmap.
Exactly. Yeah.
Understood. And Tom, same question. How would you explain Surfer to your grandmother or your grandfather?
So I would definitely need to start with explaining her how search engine works and what Google is. And if I would succeed in that, I would just say that Surfer is a friendly assistant who tells you exactly what to do to rank high in the search engine or in Google in particular. Yeah, so maybe she would understand.
I mean, there are still many people in this world who you still say Google search engine and they're like, what? Google's a search engine? What does that even mean? So yeah, you might have a pretty hard time explaining that. A couple
Yeah.
steps to it, a couple layers. Okay, so during this webinar, we're going to be talking about creating scalable content operations. Basically, we're going to talk about how to optimize and scale content ops. And I want to ask Emilia, who do you think will benefit most from this topic, and what kind of sectors do you think will get the most out of this conversation today?
Yeah, so I would say like this whole framework for scaling content ops that we're using is kind of industry agnostic. You can use it, for SaaS, but not only. But like obviously it would be most beneficial for heads of content strategists, content marketers in general. So people who work on like the organic channel as the main acquisition vehicle.
Okay, awesome. If you guys want to drop your sector in the comments, I'm curious to know what you guys work in, just for my own curiosity. So if you're not familiar with Amelia, not only is she head of marketing at Userpilot, she's also an author. She wrote a book. She wrote a book, all right, about scaling your content operations. So when I say that you're in the presence of awesomeness, like, trust me, okay? So Amelia, you talk a bit about
Blushing.
That's true. That's actually
it's true, it's
100%
true.
true.
It's true, totally. So you talk a bit about creating a content hierarchy in your book. Yeah, can you explain, number one, what a content hierarchy is and how teams can create one effectively and why it even matters?
Yeah, so I already talked a bit about maps today in relation to explaining Userpilot. So again, content hierarchy is like the map of your content, both for your like website users and for the Google crawlers. So essentially, it's a way of organizing your content in a meaningful and easily understandable way. So essentially, you map your pages starting from the home page through product solutions pages, maybe role pages. Then you drill down to the resource pages, all the content clusters that you may want to link to the different solutions and features of your product. And then going down to individual blog posts, shorter pieces of content that address like more specific long-tailed keywords related to the larger problems. So essentially this helps everyone, right? As I mentioned, it helps Google kind of understand what your website is about, where do you have the topical authority. It helps like the so-called link juice to flow evenly across the different pages of your website. So basically they are passing authority and creating this network of connections that shows you are the expert in this particular field. And of course, if you're starting from scratch, then you have a great opportunity to do it right or right-ish. And if you are further on in the journey or you inherit a website from someone as a new content marketer or head of content on the team, then it might be a bit more challenging and you may need to clean things up. I like to bring up the example from Danny's disappeared.
Yeah, then it disappeared for probably a moment.
Right. I hope
Uh,
I didn't say something
yeah,
so
you can.
embarrassing that she
You
just left.
not at all. You can continue, and I'll try
Yeah.
to follow up.
Yeah, so there is this book by Ellie Schwartz, Product-Led SEO, that I think explains the concept of content hierarchy quite well. Hi again, Danny. Essentially, it should be, Ellie says in the book, it should be more like the flight map of the Southwest Airlines, where you have a lot of direct flights going from one point to another. So it's like this well-connected, huge network of destinations where you can go directly to, rather than the flight map of, say, Singaporean airlines, where you just have one hub and then a lot of spokes sticking out of it. So you definitely don't want to end up in a situation where you have orphan pages, right, that are not linked to anything, or that you're creating, kind of going off the tangent, right? Your product is solving, say, 3 problems, but then you're writing about 20 different problems that are completely unrelated.
That's pretty awesome, metaphor, let's say, to understand easily how great content structure looks like. If you just, take a look at the most famous airlines, right, how they organize the flights between the hubs, etc. That's pretty great metaphor.
Cheers, stolen
Absolutely,
from Ellie's
absolutely.
words.
Have you guys have you guys in the audience, have you heard of content hierarchy before? Is this something that you guys are familiar with? Has it even occurred to you to kind of map out the structure of your content when it comes to your website and how people navigate and everything? Let me know. I'm looking at the comments here and there. All right, thank you, Emilia, for answering that question. So I think one of the most common questions that I see about content is how often should I write? How often should I post on my blog? What can you shed light on this about the situation? Does it matter to Google? How does frequency correlate to ranking, etc.? Let us know.
Okay, so apparently it doesn't matter how often you publish. Like if you get hold of, I don't know, John Miller and ask him, or just like Google it, he'll probably say that the frequency of publishing is not, a ranking factor. But when you think about it yourself, would you trust a domain as a user that like maybe publishes content every 3 years, right? Or publishes it very irregularly and there is some outdated information on their domain? Like probably not. So kind of Google sees it the same way because it's very aligned with, the user's best interest. So obviously we want to make sure that the information is fresh, up to date, and that kind of enforces, some level of frequency. I would say from my perspective, if you have a good content strategy, you have a good content plan, right? You have this hierarchy in place and there are like so many topics typically you can cover that are relevant to your product or service, then you should publish as often as you have the capacity to, right? As long as it doesn't interfere with the content quality and also your ability to do content updates. Because this is super important, like especially if you have covered the bottom of the funnel keywords that are driving a lot of conversions for you, then you need to make sure that these blog posts, these pages stay up to date and stay relevant and are not, outperformed by your competitors, for instance. So yeah, publish as often as you can to get as much topical authority, cover all your bases, but, don't kind of compromise on quality and content updates.
Couldn't agree more. If I can follow up on this, if publishing things on a large scale, like 100% articles within a day, is a bit challenging, and it's much easier to make mistakes, like adding broken links there, or maybe forgetting about internal links, right? So I just couldn't agree more with the philosophy that Emilia mentioned.
Yeah, I liked when you said like publishing once every 3 years. Like, can you imagine trying to become an expert in your field and you only drop in and communicate with your audience once ever so often? I mean, I think it's aligned with establishing like authority in your niche as well, having to constantly be present and have up-to-date information, like you mentioned. Thank you for that.
Yes.
So community, is there a right or wrong answer? The right answer is publish as much as you have the capacity to without sacrificing quality and also not forgetting your previously published content. So I'm not giving you a number, but I am saying as much as you can. Okay, so Emilia, next question for you. So on page 26 of your book, I took notes.
You really read it.
You say most traffic goals are set by content teams, or worse, by the C-suite, and they're completely random numbers that are not based on any realistic estimates. So first off, who should determine the goals, and how does someone or a team go about creating traffic goals?
Yeah, so creating traffic goals is notoriously difficult because there are so many variables at play. I don't want to claim by any means that it's possible to come up with, an accurate forecast for achieving your goals. But I see it more as a defense strategy against, your C-suite or the board members or the investors, whoever else is influencing, your content budgets and evaluating your performance as a content marketer, because they will ultimately ask you, right, so we're giving you, I don't know, $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 per month to produce content. Like, what are the outcomes that you have produced? And I literally heard a SaaS CEO say once, like, let's 10x our traffic in 3 months with like $5,000 per month. I mean, in a saturated niche. And, like spending a few hours at the beginning, kind of looking at your content hierarchy, looking at, say, for the next 3 months, what is your capacity to create content? How much of this content you're going to produce? Which topics you're going to prioritize, right? Then the specific keywords that are related to these topics in aggregate. When you look at the keyword clusters, you will be like potentially ranking for what is the search volume for these keyword clusters. You can use a clustering tool. There are plenty like Cluster AI, Keyword Cupid, right? I've used these too. Then it gives you an idea with the budget and resources and the time you have, what is realistically possible. But of course, your outcomes will still be quite far off the estimate based on just search volume, because it's impossible to predict like exactly how many keywords every piece of content is going to rank for, because it doesn't rank for obviously the ones that you're trying to optimize it for only. It's ranking for like hundreds of different keywords that are sort of related and ancillary, and those might drive either more traffic than you expected or maybe less traffic than you expected, right? Maybe there will be some other factors that will like throw a spanner at your works. Like, I don't know, a competitor is launching a programmatic SEO strategy and churning out a lot of pages that are super optimized, and they're going to affect your existing rankings, for instance. So you will need to focus on updating some of this content to protect your rankings, and that will make a dip in your traffic. So yeah, I was just trying to say that you cannot just like pull a random number that is like wishful thinking. Okay, we are at 10,000 monthly visitors and we want to get to 100,000 by the end of the year, without actually running some calculations and looking at your resources, if it's even remotely possible, right?
Exactly. Okay, so wishful thinking is not the way we approach everything else with researching and strategy. We have to do the same thing when making our predictions as well. No? Got it. Okay.
Yeah, it can be dangerous if, for instance, your C-suite is then going to say, oh, your content is not working, let's cut the budget, when it is working. But they were just like assuming it's going to produce like something that's just physically impossible.
Yeah. Keeping that communication open with the C-suite when setting these goals can be probably challenging for some people, I imagine. It's not easy. It's not easy all the time, but okay. All right. It is necessary though, from what I'm hearing. Okay. So you also talk about the importance of updating older content as well. And I'm a content creator, I'm a writer, I'm a copywriter. I do a lot of hats. I wear a lot of hats, but I can understand how it can feel like juggling sometimes. When you're like, I want to produce new content, I want to stay relevant, I want to write things that are up to date, but also I have content that I've already produced. And from what I'm understanding, Userpilot's monthly content production is off the charts. So how can you give us any type of tips for finding a healthy balance between updating old content and producing new content?
Yeah, so first of all, what we learned the hard way how important content updates are, when suddenly, despite like investing more and more in content and producing more and more content, like suddenly our traffic actually dipped and we were like, whoa, what's going on, right? And we investigated and we realized we actually lost our position in SERPs for like a few keywords that were driving a lot of traffic and a lot of engagement and conversions. And that was like a big oops, where we realized we were dropping the ball on that. And after that, we implemented a few measures to prevent such situations in the future. So first of all, you don't have to put the same pressure and the same, like attach the same importance to every piece of content. Like you need to create a bucket of posts that are the most important to you, and that you will be updating kind of most regularly and also watching most regularly. Because if you're producing a lot of content, and we're producing currently 60 blog posts per month, and we're going after 100 by the end of the year. So, we can't be updating 1,000 blog posts every month. So how do we do that? We looked at the conversion rates for our blogs, and we have like the first priority bucket, which are the posts that have the highest conversion rates. So obviously the ones that are driving revenue, like direct revenue. So these can be very bottom of the funnel posts, like competitor alternatives or competitor versus competitor, best tools for something. So people directly convert from them. So these are the posts that we update every 3 months, and we have like an Asana board, where basically there is this, whole list of blogs that needs to be regularly like watched and updated. And we also have a Google Data Studio dashboard that allows us to see at a glance what is the position in SERPs for the main keyword that is driving these conversions, and basically how it changes over time. So it's like a monthly table, right? Where basically we see, okay, if like a position for a specific keyword is dropping, that means very likely like several of these keywords are dropping, right? Because maybe we've been one-upped by a competitor, which happens in this very competitive market. Then we need to instantly step in and like put this piece of content into the audit in Surfer, which is usually what we do, and see like, oh, who was that outperformed us in terms of content score, and what else we can do. Like the suggestions Surfer is giving are very, very helpful, to update this content, make it more relevant. Maybe we need to add more internal links. Maybe we need to add more images or whatnot. We're experimenting with media. And then there are the other buckets that are maybe lower priority, that get updated, like I say, only every 6 months, every 9, every 12 months. So kind of we look at it like that. We have this Asana board. And one more important tip for that is to have a dedicated person that is responsible for the update. And that shouldn't be the same person on your team, ideally, as the person who's producing new content, because there is always this conflict of interest between the leading metrics or content velocity and the new and updating the old. So in our case, the head of content is responsible for, the leading metrics, so producing new content. But then the head of growth is looking at the performance of the historical content in these Google Data Studio dashboards, and she basically allocates update tasks to the content editors and the writers.
Okay. Thank you for that. Oof. It sounds like a well-oiled machine, but it is a machine.
Yeah.
So I believe Peter asked the question. So you mentioned, Emilia, that right now you're producing about 60 blog posts per month, and you're on your way to trying to get to 100 by the end of this year. You said, no?
Yeah.
Okay. So with how many people are on your team? That is the question that Peter has.
Yeah, great question. So we have the head of content who's responsible for the strategy, keyword research, topic generation, like organizing them all into these content clusters that are then related to the content hierarchy. We have 3 full-time content editors that are responsible for producing the briefs for these pieces of content, like setting up the content editors in Surfer, then, filling in the briefs with important information for the writers, assigning the individual tasks to the writers. And 360, that's kind of, you can see the proportions. So each content editor is, in theory at least, responsible for producing 20 blog posts per month. So that's one blog post per day. So they create one brief per day, and then they check and edit one piece of content from the previous week, from the brief they created, on the same day a week ago. So that's also a very well-oiled machine where we have these content clusters in the content epics assigned to specific content editors that are supposed to create briefs and deliver new content for this epic on a specific day of the week. So I did describe this in a lot of detail in the content ops book. It was just like Google content operations in Amazon. You will probably stumble upon it. So that's the free content editors. And then we have several freelance content writers. Like at this point, probably around 15. I'm saying probably because off the top of my head, I would need to look at Asana to, know exactly. It changes quite frequently. We try not to rely on single points of failure. So have one writer produce too many, pieces of content, because if they get sick or, whatever happens, then we're losing a lot of that content velocity. So the original kind of idea was to have one writer produce one piece of content per week. So with 60 pieces of content divided by 20 days, right, in a month, that would be like 3 pieces of content per week per writer. That was like, the case. And then we have a proofreader, right, who's like sitting at the very end of the food chain. And this is the person who proofreads, does the final like SEO checks for the content, and puts the like hand on the trigger on the publication. And this is the person who's also responsible for writing the social media posts for each piece of content, because we use StoryChief for publishing the content across our all platforms and then distributing it to Medium with a canonical tag to all our social media. So the proofreader also needs to create this like social media content immediately after publishing.
Okay. That's a lot of information, and we have a valid question. Does Emilia do consultancy as to how to set this up in an organization, please? That's my interpretation of the question.
Honestly, I'm quite busy right now, and I get that question a lot. I'm creating a lot of instructions and content on that, basically documenting what I'm doing, because, I have the memory of a goldfish. It's very good, but very short. So I'm also doing it for myself. So you can like check out my Patreon and get all the playbooks for like $10 a month. And I do like free consulting on Growth Mentor once per week. So like, I'm just trying to be realistic here.
Absolutely. So just want to share with the audience, we are going to be sharing some resources that Emilia has with her Patreon for free for you guys, because you're here and we adore you. So thank you for showing up. If you registered via email, I'll be organizing that for you after the event. Also, we're going to choose a few people to get access to Emilia's book, specifically 5. Okay, but I'll explain more about that later. But yes, we're not going to leave you guys empty-handed. Okay, I know there's a lot of information, a lot of stuff that you want to learn more about, so there will be more information to come. No worries. So, did we get a final tally, Emilia? So you had maybe like 15 freelancers, head of content, head of growth, 3 editors, and
a proofreader. Yeah. So that's the content team. That's not the whole marketing team, of course, because, for instance, as I mentioned, we still have a head of growth who's, for instance, like looking after the content updates, doing technical SEO and managing the paid channels. We have a graphic designer. That's also someone that is very, very important for the content team, actually. It was a game changer to have someone in-house to design all the featured images, all the infographics for our blog. So like the MVP content team, so to say, to produce 60 posts per month would be head of content, 3 editors, and a proofreader.
Okay. We have one more question about this. So does the proofreader handle all 60 content pieces and social posts per month?
Yes.
Yes,
Short
we do.
answer.
We
And
do.
it's a freelancer. But I'm just gonna like be perfectly honest that we don't put a lot of stress on social media because organic social reach is abysmal these days. So it's more like, to show people we are alive. And of course, then some people do resharing, like some organizations in product management and product marketing are just like following our accounts and resharing our content when it's good and they find it relevant. So that's why we're doing it. But we don't have like a very sophisticated social media strategy per se. So that's why this person is just like literally paraphrasing the introductions to the post, sticking them into the scheduler in StoryChief, and then like distributing it all with one button without sweating over it.
Got it. Okay. I guess you can do that when your organic traffic is so great and the content you guys are producing is reaching so many eyes. So that's awesome. That's just another credit to what you've built, what you all are building there at Userpilot. So I'm going to bring up this topic that no one really wants to talk about, but we got to talk about it, and it's money. So, what should be factored in when a team or when an organization is creating a content budget? What do you think?
Oh, Tomek, you want to take this one first, or shall I? I don't know.
Yeah, I can.
Like,
I'd love to. Sure. So it always depends, right, on the company and the marketing channels the company uses to attract new customers, engage existing, and so on. But I can confidently say that in our case at Surfer, uh, our budget, marketing budget in general, contains of ad spend, salaries, right, for all of the wonderful people that are working at Surfer's marketing team, plus contractors and freelancers, and all of the agencies that sometimes we are working with. And of course, the content production. Most often, it's about using some help from freelancers, right? Some budget for backlinks providers and outreachers. So yeah, we are trying to split the money between those things that works best for us, right? And the last thing I almost forgot to mention, that we from time to time we also sponsored. We're doing some sponsorships for I don't know, YouTube videos, some newsletters, right? But we loved when we can combine sponsorship with some affiliate, right, marketing, when the people who are taking our sponsorships are also creating more materials, right, like educational video content, article, for example, and so on.
Okay, so
yeah.
wait, I heard affiliates, I heard link building, I heard some more. Can you just give me like top 5 or like maybe
Top 5 for Surfer, because that can be the recommendation for all of the companies, unfortunately. But for Surfer, it's well, content production, backlinks, right, ad spend in general, Facebook, Google Ads, Twitter, some other platforms if we want to use them. Yeah, sponsorships, and yeah, that's pretty much everything.
Got it. And you, Emilia?
Yeah, so I actually pulled up some numbers while I was listening to Tomek's budget. So yeah, the first thing for content operations, like starting from content, because the marketing budget is a whole different story. Like as Tomek said, it includes like ad spend, for instance, affiliates. If this is part of your strategy, this, for instance, isn't part of our strategy. But yeah, just focusing on content alone, a lot of content managers make the mistake of factoring only like the freelancer's cost or, the writing cost into the budget. And then they are surprised that with the budget they have been allocated from, the management, they aren't able to produce as much as they thought. Because there are a lot of fixed costs that come into play These are the costs of tools. With the tools that we are using, we're paying like roughly over $1,000 per month, just for the tools. So we're obviously using Surfer, we're using StoryChief to kind of manage the relationship between the content writers and the editors, and then to publish this content on all the different platforms. And we're using WordTune to kind of help, rev things up a bit when the editors are lost for words, writing, for the 10th time about a similar topic. We are also using, like these project management tools that maybe also shared with other teams. So then you need to split the costs and include that into your budget as well, because the more writers you have, for instance, the more you're going to be paying per seat on Asana or, Notion. If you want to share your SOPs or, include them in your workflow, then you should be factoring that in, because it's like, okay, $10 here, $20 there, but suddenly if you multiply, say, $30, like for these extra seats on project management tools times 15 writers, it suddenly becomes a substantial cost. So, and then of course you need to factor in the salaries of your full-time employees. So that's another important cost. If you're outsourcing graphic design for your content, that's another layer on top that you need to include. So actually I crunched some numbers for sort of different configurations. Can I like briefly share my screen to go through the numbers? What do you guys think?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Cool. Let's do that. So yeah, so say like publishing 60 traditional. Can you all see my screen, right?
Yes, it's
Yeah,
working.
good. Great. So with the model that we are following now, so 3 full-time editors publishing 60 traditional, so like human written posts per month, the total cost would be around $30,000, right? This is sort of the benchmarks based on the cost per post that we managed to achieve so far, right?
Mhm.
And like the average, like this is actually our tool spend, the salaries, that's around as much as it takes with the core like MVP team that I mentioned. Of course, it will vary greatly depending on your location, whether you're hiring remotely or you're, kind of location based, etc., etc. Then there is the cost of hiring. And that's another thing that with a larger content operation, a lot of people are not taking into consideration. So you will need to be setting up trials with new writers. Your writers will be churning. That may be like adding extra cost to your process. You may need to, post job ads on different platforms. Like you may need to use an application tracking system for that as well. Then also the cost of proofreading and publishing. Like someone should be doing this, right? Otherwise, like your content quality may suffer as well. So yeah, like you can see, if we just look at the average cost per post, when it comes to only the writer's fees, it's like 262. But when we include all the other costs, it's suddenly almost twice that, right?
Yeah.
So it's $482. So I just kind of wanted to shed light on that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I never thought about hiring costs. That is extremely valid. Extremely valid. Totally. Okay.
Yes.
You mentioned a couple things in your in your tool stack, WordTune and StoryChief. Can you tell us a little bit more about what those tools are and what they do and how you guys use them?
Sure. So, StoryChief we've been using for a very, very long time. It's essentially like a content management system that sits between, our blogs, so our CMS there, like WordPress. We're specifically using WordPress, and the writers. So the writers write in StoryChief. Well, first they write in Surfer, right? Once they get a good content score, they move the content to StoryChief, and this is the place where the editors pick up where the writer has left off. So once the writer is happy with the final draft, they've done all the formatting, they included all the images from the brief as well, then they basically push the task on Asana, to like done in editing, right? And that's where the editor who wrote the brief for the writer originally goes back. They like basically check against the brief, check against Surfer if everything that should have been included has been included. If not, then they are leaving comments on Story Chief for the writer, so the writer can go back and forth and do a few rounds of additions if this is necessary. So that's one advantage. Why not do it in Google Docs? Like, I mean, if you don't have any budget for extra tools, then you can do the same thing in Google Docs. But the thing is, StoryCheap allows you to edit everything for your blog directly. So if you have links and you're indicating, okay, these links should be do follow, these links should be no follow, like you can set that basically the attributes directly in StoryChief without having to go back to the text editor in your CMS. Also, it allows you to set the right alt texts for your images, right? It allows you to format everything. So you make sure, that's why the proofreader also uses StoryChief before publishing. They make sure that, the hierarchy of titles is right. So say the writer has not used headings for like stylistic purposes, which is wrong, right? They use them for organizational purposes only. So the heading hierarchy is right, everything is in place and ready for publishing. And then when it comes to publishing, StoryChief handles the distribution, as I mentioned, to different platforms. So at one click, we push the content perfectly formatted to our blog. We push the content to Medium with a canonical tag, right? So that's kind of another distribution channel that is driving now, sometimes even almost 1,000 visitors per month to our blog from the internal links. We are seeing, after a year and a half of doing this, just on autopilot, no effort required, we're seeing conversions trickling in from Medium as well. And at one click, they can basically push the content to all the social media platforms. So in a sense, we don't need to invest in another like social media scheduling tool because it's all integrated, and it really helps like keep the workflow consistent, right? So we don't miss out on any publication channels.
I would love to follow up on the Medium because it also allows you from time to time to get a great traction, right, on this platform, and people can vote. Vote on the articles and increase their visibility in the platform. And like 3 years ago, we did something like that at Surfer, and one of our articles that was probably related to the case study got an amazing traction. And a platform, a service based on Medium, put that article in their newsletter that was sent to over 500,000 people.
Wow.
And that was like 2 minutes of work, right, to just publish this article on the Medium. And yeah, it turned out to something amazing.
Yeah, so we even reduce these 2 minutes. It just happens automatically. Yeah.
Yeah, push a button. And people in the audience, are you guys taking advantage of Medium? Are you familiar with the platform? Do you use it? Have you considered it before? Yeah, Pablo wants to know if you duplicate on Medium and in your internal blog, Emilia. Is that how it works?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like one-to-one, the same content. We've watched it because, as I said, like you need to set the canonical tag to indicate to Google which piece of content is original and which should be indexed. And this means your blog post is the one that is, visible for the search engines, and that is like, going to be basically ranked for the keyword that you have optimized it for. So there is no cannibalization, right? But the Medium post is still, visible to the Medium community, which in some niches is huge. Like for instance, our audience product managers do hang out on Medium a lot, and they are following certain brands that are producing good content. And then, like as Tomek said, upvoting good articles, clapping for them, and that, creates this just extra distribution channel. So we don't worry about SEO for Medium. It's like completely two different distribution channels.
Got it. Okay. But the important step you mentioned was the canonical tag, no? For Google letting Google know which one. That's the key. That's the key. Okay. So you told us a bit about your tool stack. I wanted to know, Tom, for the marketing team at Surfer, what are some of your favorite tools that we use here?
Sure, Danny. So my favorite tools are, apart from Surfer, of course. So Ahrefs, where we check all of the SEO data that we just can't find in Surfer, and we also validate the domains of affiliates who apply for affiliates who apply to our affiliate program on a weekly basis. We use also Intercom, and it's amazing tool, quite expensive if you ask me, but very powerful. And I'm glad for the growth, because we started with Intercom like 5 years ago. They offered us a plan for startups, and then after a certain time we needed to change the platform, and we came back to them, and it's even better right now. So I really recommend that. And apart from that, there's one more amazing tool we use. It's called First Promoter, and we are using it for managing our affiliate program in general.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So Matt has a question. Canonical meaning, what is it? Help us out, fill us in. Emilia?
Yeah, so I think we mentioned it basically indicates to Google which piece of content that is like identical of the two is the original one, right? So you literally point to the original source in the canonical tag. But that's why we're also using Storage, because we can set it on autopilot, so we don't have to repeat the settings for every post we're pushing to Medium. It's automatically there. Yeah, so Brad has actually explained it. Yeah, it's literally pointing back to the original URL. So this is happening on autopilot when you're publishing with Storage. But I realized, Danny, I didn't answer the rest of your question about the other tools we're using, and now Tomek reminded me. We also use Ahrefs for all our keyword research, rank tracking related stuff. We use WordTune as an AI kind of content repurposing tool. It's kind of like Grammarly on steroids. So, it helps our writers and our editors when they feel a bit stuck how to phrase things. But also I've experimented with using it for paraphrasing content, so kind of modern spinning, when we have a lot of content already on specific topics, but we want to recycle it but for a new angle. So content with a different intent, but similar in terms of topic. And then we use WordTeam to paraphrase some chunks of the earlier articles that we have published to make sure it's not even so much for content duplication, because for different intents it doesn't matter that much, but for user experience, right? So people don't read the same content across different blog posts. Yeah, we use a whole bunch of tools. I really couldn't, list them all off the top of my head. For content, this would be it. And obviously, we're using Userpilot on Userpilot. We're using Unbounce for landing pages, and a few more tools for graphic design.
Okay. So what part and at what stage does Surfer come into Userpilot's content creation strategy?
I'm just going to turn the light on because it's getting dark suddenly. Yeah, so you mean historically when we started using Surfer, or what stage of the...
what stage of the, because again, we talked about machine. So what point does Surfer come in? Is it in the beginning, the end? When do you use Surfer, and what is the how does Userpilot use Surfer basically in their content creation?
Sure. Oh, so we use it quite a lot at different stages, really. So we use it for creating the briefs first. So that's when we first set up the content editor. We look at what other suggestions that Surfer is giving us there in terms of the blog outline. Sometimes these are really good, so we just can copy and paste things. sometimes for like kind of more exotic keywords or very long tail keywords, the suggestions may not be enough. And that's where we need the content editors to do some more background research and maybe like original research to come up with a brief for the writers. So this is like, the first step, really the preparatory groundwork before the writers even start doing anything. And then the writers write in Surfer. The first draft is written in Surfer Content Editor. We always like push them to hit at least 80 in terms of the content score. So we want to reach the green line. And it's very helpful because they can see, the keywords that they have already used in the content, like the recommended, basically, keyword density they should be using. So they're like using these guidelines also in terms of, the number of headings, images to produce a piece of content that is going to perform well in search. And then, this content goes into publishing, it gets published, la-di-da, and then we have the rounds of updates, especially for the important content. That's where we use Surfer's audit. And especially for the pieces of content that we produced even before we implemented Surfer, that was super helpful. And that was what got us to use Surfer in the first place. Yeah, because at first, it actually took us a while to implement Surfer because I didn't get internal buy-in until I was able to demonstrate that the old content that we updated with Surfer's audit, like jumped up in ranks sometimes from the second to the first page in just 3 weeks. So that was where I was like, I could demonstrate, like, right, guys, we're all moving to Surfer.
That's the best sales strategy for us when we can prove the results.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know it sounds very advertorial, but this was literally the story.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I just want to share one story with you. When we started the company 4 years ago, I went to one company, as a salesperson. I wanted to just show them Surfer and convince them to buy a package, and we did exactly. We did similar thing to you, Emilia. We used audit feature. We added some changes based on the recommendations from audit, and somehow Google has indexed those changes within the next hour or so, and the results came after this hour or two. So I still have been in this company when they ranking just went to like fifth or fourth position. So that was amazing experience for me as a salesman back then.
Awesome. Like, that's actually one of my questions. So like, when you're trying to introduce a new tool in a company, do you have any other tips to kind of, I mean, of course, besides the actual proof, how do you go about presenting to the C-suite or to your team? Like, I want to use this tool, I want to use this platform, not necessarily Surfer, but maybe Surfer. Like, how do you go about presenting that to your team?
Yeah, I think you should like ideally do a trial or a pilot and, demonstrating some ROI, because the investment is not just investment in the subscription itself. It's often the investment of time in training the team how to use it, like implementing a new process, creating new SOPs. So, when you land with a tool, it's like a very responsible decision because if you choose to change it, you need to like change the training materials, especially at with an operation of like our maturity. We have so many writers and they change, like writers obviously change a lot. They're freelance people. They may like decide to, I don't know, go on a holiday for a couple of months and travel the world or like change profession, whatever. Right. So you need to have SOPs, like if all the writers are using Surfer, like in our case, how to use it, because we don't have the time to individually walk everyone through it. And our process, because it's not just tool itself. So yeah, like you need to demonstrate to whoever is the decision maker that this whole investment is going to be worth it. And we managed to do that. As I said, I built a Google Data Studio dashboard that just like tracked the position of the keywords You could do it in Search Console, but like that was easier for me to like visually show, like, look, it was on position 12 and now it's in position 5. And the 12 didn't budge for like, I don't know, 3-4 months, and now after 3 weeks it changed. So it's definitely can be attributed, and all these changes happened at the same time. So just look at this table and imagine if we rolled it out to all our content, right? So yeah, you need to sell them the vision.
Yeah, you got to paint the picture with some proof in there. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I
Emilia,
seriously, I'm seriously agreeing with everything Emilia is saying today. It's like, it's
yeah, of course.
We should pick a topic we disagree on.
yeah, exactly. We need to fight on
Spice it
something
up.
at least.
Yeah.
So Emilia, do you know what Surfer plan Userpilot uses to kind of orientate a little bit the people in the audience?
I had to like double check. I had to like go back to our account and go back to your pricing. Like, because we've been using Surfer for so long, I think we're on some kind of a legacy plan now. I think we originally went with the Pro plan, but it seems like we have different limits on the account. So
Got it.
yeah.
And Tom, can you break down what a pro plan even means and like who that would work for? Because I mean, not everyone's Userpilot, but this can probably help other people as well. So can you kind of help the audience
Yeah,
out?
sure. So I would suggest if you're, a medium company or an agency with a needs approximately for like 30 articles a month, the Pro plan is for you. If you are going to write 10 or less article a month, basic is totally enough, right? And if you have more needs, you need to write more articles, and you want to optimize them with Surfer's content editor and other tools, then you probably need to go with business plan or contact our sales team and try to figure out something on a custom plan.
Okay, awesome. So I know we're winding down. I just have maybe like 1.5 more questions, and maybe I'm going to pull one from the audience. We'll see. So I'm curious, we're curious, how do you go about onboarding new writers and finding quality writers? Because you mentioned sometimes the turnover rate with freelancers, how do you go about maintaining the quality standards that you have, finding new writers and onboarding new writers?
Yeah, so actually, that might be a topic that Tomek will disagree with me on, because I think Tomek at some point mentioned that, like I said that, well, you shouldn't produce more than you can like manage in terms of quality. And Tomek said, like, if your organization produces too much, they will not be able to keep up with the quality. So I think that depends on the quality of your processes. So essentially, the quality of your content drops with increasing velocity, right? With increasing output volume, it drops to the quality of your process. If you have great processes and if you have adequate resources to execute these processes, then the quality shouldn't drop. Even if you produce, I don't know, even if you publish 10 blogs per day or 100 blogs per day, right? If you have enough people to manage the whole thing. So this is what I spent like an entire year on last year, just documenting the processes, creating checklists, then together with our head of content, who was basically promoted from one of the first writers, then editors, to that role, and we basically created an SOP for everything. So this is how we onboard our writers. This is how we onboard our new editors. We have different SOPs for them. We have like whole training hubs for them. So at the beginning, we did a lot of things manually. We would like gather all the writers, new writers in cohorts that we hired. We would hire a bunch at a time, gather them together, walk them through the processes that would create video materials. Then we kind of included in the SOPs and also reverse engineered. So to write down every step of the process. And that is currently what we are doing. We're just sending them a bunch of materials. and they need to like consume them within a week. There are tests to like kind of test their knowledge, test their understanding of the material. And then if there is something that is not clear, they can jump on a call with the head of content at the end of the week, or the content editor that is managing this particular writer. But typically, these should be cosmetic questions at this point. They should be able to onboard themselves with all these materials.
Yes, everything. I agree, of course, but everything breaks down to the processes and the resources needed, right? So I'm always trying to compare it to the cars factories. For example, BMW, right? They produced a lot of cars with great quality, but it took a lot for them to organize this kind of process at this scale and this level, and it took a lot of resources, right? So if the company is just starting and the marketing team is smaller, let's say smaller than, for example, our marketing channel or yours, I would rather suggest finding a gold mine and focusing on more quality for every single piece than trying to increase the velocity. So that was my point back then. However, if you are able to produce a lot of content based on great SOPs and the structure of the process, and you have resources, right? You have money to pay to the freelancers and all of the people involved, then I'm really confident that that's the way to go.
Okay. So setting up the structure, knowing the resources you have on your team, and just keeping that structure solid. Making sure your SOPs are up to date, and making sure that they can basically onboard themselves, it seems. No, Emilia? Like you provide them with the materials, and then it's like, I really like the addition of tests as well, because it kind of does keep it sharp and fresh and measurable, no?
Yeah. Although, like having said that, when Tomek said about this, talked about this BMW factory, like even if the quality is great and the processes are super consistent, probably every 1,000 or 100,000 cars, something is going to happen, right? Inevitably, something will let you down, be it a person or maybe even a machine or the process itself, because it was prepared for a smaller scale, and then as you scale more, it turns out that there are unprecedented challenges in it. So, like it's inevitable that there will be some problems. I think from our perspective, the biggest problem is with people, and especially content editors is like a very vulnerable role, because they need to be kind of subject matter experts. They are the protectors of the content quality. So if like they aren't able to wrap their heads around something about our product, or something about the industry, that's a challenge that can slow everything down, reduce quality, etc., etc. So that's also why we are like investing in a research into programmatic SEO, and how we can sort of remove some of the responsibility off them, especially for like repetitive keywords that follow a certain fixed pattern.
Got it. Okay.
Plus one.
Okay. So we have a little bit of tidying up to do. So for anyone who is still here and they want these extra 3 content editor credits, hold 5 seconds. Apart from that, I'm going to skip over it. I want to let you guys know that, again, if you registered for this event via email, you can expect an email from Surfer or from me at Surfer. Someone from Surfer is going to contact you, and we're going to be sharing some of the tools. Is it the right word to say tools, Emilia? Some of the tool platforms.
Playbooks.
There we go.
Scripts,
I like
yeah.
playbooks. We're going to be sharing some of the playbooks that Emilia has created and shared with her community that's normally behind a paywall, but is not going to be behind a paywall for you all today for spending time with us. And that will be sent out to email. Also, if you take a moment and write to the marketing email and let us know something that you learned today from this talk with Emilia and with Tom, we will choose 5 people randomly to get access to Emilia's book. And I talk about playbooks, like, hello. pages on pages of knowledge that I with. And
Oops. We do have
your content editors. Yeah.
Danny,
Is take a screenshot.
we are
Can I repeat?
losing
Do I need to
you.
repeat?
Yeah, could you reload and repeat? That would be awesome. The last, 15 seconds, because
the
we
living
experienced
proof
some
that
problem.
everything breaks, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wait, sorry.
I think Tomek, you may need to take over.
Yeah, I'd love to. So, as Danny mentioned, we are going to draw 5 people who will get Emilia's book. And I really encourage all of you to write at marketing@surfaceseo.com with things that you learned, because this book is amazing, and you definitely want to read it. So, if you have 5 minutes, please write an email right away, so you don't miss a chance. You won't miss a chance to get the book. And apart from that, all of the people who are with us right now live, you can expect three more content editor queries added to your account. You just need to email support@surferseo.com with a screenshot of you being with us here, and that's it. That's everything you need to do in exchange for getting more content editor queries. Danny will be with us within the next 15 seconds, Emilia. So maybe it's a great moment to answer some questions from the chat, because I noticed that there were plenty, if you don't mind.
Awesome. Shall I pick something that I find interesting?
Of course.
Let me scroll. Like, people are saying
So
you.
maybe the
okay.
first from the top.
Oh, I was looking for this one because it caught my attention. I was having a look at the chat. This is a very tricky question. Do you think it's a good idea to begin posts with low quality content and improve it step by step? All right, so it depends on your goals again and your target audience for the content. So there can be very many repercussions of this decision, so like consequences. So if your audience is sophisticated and your goal is for the content to produce conversions, and it has to be super high quality for your audience to, like take the next step, be it like sign up for a trial of your product or whatever your conversion goal is, then I wouldn't risk it. Because, okay, if you're producing content mostly for SEO, for like, people to find you through the organic channel, they will keep finding you for a while. But if they keep like knocking against the wall of really horrible content that is not helpful, especially after the helpful content update, they will keep bouncing back, and Google will notice it and will like depreciate your content and even your entire site. You may be hit by, this is not really a penalty, but it's a site-wide content update. So if you're producing content of low quality that doesn't resonate with your audience, it may hit you badly. On the flip side, if your audience may not be like that super sophisticated, and I know people who are, for instance, creating affiliate sites that are doing really, really well with content that may not be like that super high quality, but the audience doesn't mind that maybe the language isn't super polished, it's not a problem, then yeah, you could experiment with that. The advantage of this is that you can produce a lot of content that will start already like ranking, and then you can see what is biting. So, which content is ranking better and maybe resonating with your audience better. And then you can invest just more resources into improving this content, especially. I know, Tomek, this is an interesting question. Would you like to share your thoughts on it as well?
Danny is back.
Yay!
Yeah, hello, Danny. So we started picking some questions, but you and I also continued. So I've mentioned that people can get the book, etc. So we can move on to the final stage of this awesome webinar.
Is that the content editor credits?
Yes.
Okay, I'm like, this is what I was here for. I was here for the screenshot moment. Okay, so everyone, if you want your content editor credits, you are going to take a screenshot of me with this, okay? Me with this poster right here. Take a screenshot. And you're going to send this to support, all right? I'll pose. Hello, everyone. Take your screenshots. It also has all of the instructions for you as well. I came in at the right moment. It's fine. So again, take a screenshot of me holding this piece of paper for 3 extra editor credits.
You can mirror the camera.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah, now
There we
it's
go.
Perfect.
clear.
Okay. Posing. I'm not gonna stay like this all night because I know we all have stuff to do, but screenshot of this. Okay, guys? All right, cool. And the deadline to submit for these credits is Friday, the 14th of October.
All right.
Just in case. I'll just be quiet and be here. Please, Tom, continue.
Yeah, I think that's we are already 10 minutes away, so we can just end the webinar. I hope that you like it. I'm referring to our awesome audience. Let us know what are your thoughts. I was able to notice some great comments, but if there's anything we could improve for the future, let us know as well.
Okay, thank you guys for coming. Thank you, Emilia. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone. Surfers, all of the above. Surfer knows what to expect. It's fine. They just need the piece of paper. All right. Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening. And thank you, Emilia, again for your time and all of your wisdom that you shared, and Tom as well.
Thank you so much, Danny and Tom, for having me. It was a pleasure. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye.